So there's going to be a title somewhere on the screen that could be irksome, a bit annoying, or is it clickbaity? Um, Time's gonna tell. So the way we're gonna approach this, that you are such a child, is linked to how that can be an annoying part of us, but then there could be a really, really sweet, lovely part of that for us. And then what we covered in our last video, as a very quick summary, is what a egost is. And we made the comparison there how our ego, our identity, our self is such a crossover and a comparison between our cliche ideas of what a ghost is. So it's like a non-physical thing that seems to haunt us. Now, if you want to watch that prior video, we go into that from a conceptual idea and then from an actual scientific standpoint, how there's a very strange, lovely crossover of that idea. Okay, so if we're tying in why I brought that up, plus saying you are such a child, where does our ego start? And again, our ego is our name, our identity, our individual name that we live by. All ideas swing around, all notions go through there, in there, and whatever else. But where does that start? And it of course starts from the vast majority of people when we're born. That's when you get your name. Somebody else gives you that name. And what's very curious is for the first few years, sure, we're absolutely in a beautiful way brain dead when we're younger. We haven't really tucked that name on yet. It's just something that eventually our brains catch up and we're familiar. It's like, oh, and then somehow over time that becomes who we believe to be. Okay, so if you take egost, the whole idea we have, our conceptual idea of identity, which we do creatively, you then put in front of it where it all begins for all of us, baby ghost. So obviously that can just be baby ghost, or then, which is a very, I'm not sure if it's just Dundalk or if it's an Irish thing as well, BabiEgost. So it works either way, and that is the name of the hoodie we've been selling for the last week, maybe 2 weeks. This is the design here. It's just out of the wash. I haven't ironed it yet. And by the way, if anybody's bought this, even though I've said it, don't iron this part. I always put a towel over it before you iron it. So a very, very cute design that I'm going to eventually have up on the screen anyway to talk about it a wee bit more. And how, by the way, this goes back to, of course, you are such a child. And are you very childish? Are you very silly? Or is all of that a good thing or a bad thing? And then, of course, we have our logo at the front, which I'm very excited to do a video on sometime soon, because where the logo started off ended up being a very lovely idea, and where it unintentionally led was just pure lovely luck. So if we're looking at BabiEgost, where our name starts, where it all goes from there, then it's into this design, and you'll see with that design, I'll have it up here, some people are saying it looks like an actual baby ghost holding a little doll of a ghost. So it's actually a baby, the bigger one's the baby holding the ghost. That could be applicable. Other people are saying it looks like an older version of a ghost holding a baby ghost. Some people are saying that as well. And what's very fortunate about Tut Designs is we put a lot of stories into very simple designs. And we want them to be felt, because obviously everybody's going to take their own feeling from it, but the more ideas we put into them, we like to call that the hidden sparkle. I robbed that off somebody, where you're given more chances for people to feel something genuine from it. And another thing with Tut Designs, which we only discovered a wee while ago, is that all of our designs have actually, even up until now, and all the ones we did over the summer that are due over the next year or so, they all have one secret meaning. All of them, even the ones we did before, even the ones we were trying out, just by pure fun and luck, there's a running meaning through all of them. And I'd love someday down the road if somebody were able to figure that out, which I'll yap more about way down the road. So, looking at that design there, what the main thing is with our designs, we always try to make them about everybody's experience, okay? Or most people's experience. So if you're looking at that baby ghost, either way you want to take it, is it an adult holding a ghost, or is it a baby ghost holding a little mini ghost doll? Okay, so to go into now, the title, You Are Such a Child. Okay, now think about the main things we do as children, okay, and how we get scared. So basically what scares us as a child, what puts fear in us, and what brings us relief, okay? Now, there's obviously an inherent biological part of us that wants to be safe physically, and that is as normal as it gets. But where we're talking about feeling unsafe and fear from is thoughts, okay? Now, you would say as a child, because thoughts and imagination are only really starting to actually come into that mind, that their thoughts just run a million miles with, to just go absolutely berserk. Obvious examples of that is when kids at night get scared. They're imagining monsters here, monsters there, under the bed, in the wardrobe. They're just, their imagination's going crazy, and they just want relief from that. And that can continue into their day, where they see something they don't really recognize. They put an idea onto it, some imagination, and they're terrified of it straight away. Some of it, obviously, if you see a physical difference, which we do now, a physical threat, you'll be like, I need to be safe here. But we're talking about the thoughts that can be unreasonable, and they start when we're a child, okay? And then, of course, with the baby ghost idea, the egos, the baby ghost identity, our own name when we're young, that's when we start grasping what that might be. We're just trying to protect that all the time. First with our thoughts, and then the body imitates that. Okay, so thoughts is, and our crazy imagination when we're younger, is something we're trying to get relief from. And you would say something we're also looking from is, when we're younger, is just to feel safe and loved by others. Okay, so what we're basically looking for all the time as kids is to have some safety from our wild imagination and our thoughts, and then we're looking to feel safe physically, and then safety from another, so having somebody that will make you feel safe. And then we're looking for love as well. So safety and love feel like the same thing, but then love and recognition can really feel like the same thing. Like when you're younger, we've all done it. You just do a little fucking shitty drawing of God knows what, and you're taking it home and you're like, look at what I have done here. And then it's very sweet, the parents being like, but it is like, sometimes I know a parent will put it on, but it is even amazing that a child can do that. So it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. And we're just like over the top with the praise, we're over the top with this, we're over the top with that, like giving all this love and affection. And when we're younger and we're like loving it, we're looking for safety from our imagination as a child. We're looking to feel safe and loved from others, and we're looking for recognition. That's what we're always looking for. That's the mode of childhood. Okay, now when I said in the title, You Are Such a Child, the things I just detailed there, is there any difference in how we behave in adulthood as there is to childhood? From the main examples I just gave there, which is a very rough but very precise summary of a child's internal experience. So what was it I said? Comparing it to how we live now every day in our lives, whether we're 20s, 30s, even older, of course, we're looking to have relief from our thoughts. In fact, if we were looking for anything at the deepest, most lovely psychological level, that's the only thing we're actually ever looking for, is relief from our thoughts and our imagination. Okay, so that's what we're doing all the time. Now, if we're looking to feel safe as a child, of course we're trying to feel safe all the time. And in fact, we really do flourish when we feel safe. And what is another, as I said, comparison to feeling safe? It's feeling loved. And if there was ever a time we are relaxed and we shine, is when we feel loved by others. When you hear somebody just say that, there's an inherent part of us that thinks, I'm not good enough. I wish I could be loved by this, that, the other, everybody, whoever. There's a really inherent part of us that's like, I just wish I was loved more, and I wish I was enough. And again, the wish I was enough part comes into the recognition, because I just made the comparison of myself and other children. You do something when you're looking for recognition. Do we not still do that all the time? If we're playing football, now by the way, there's nothing wrong with any of this, but if we're playing football, we're doing this, we do something in work, and the biggest example of all might be when we make a joke, even as adults, and we all know this feeling. You make a joke and you're looking around a wee bit, especially if it's with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, especially if there's so many examples, and you're like waiting for the reaction. And if you get that reaction inside, you're like, thank God. And when it doesn't land, you're acting like, oh yeah, but like your little core is like, I'm so fucking stupid. Which is obviously a ridiculous way to think, but it's such a regular way that we do think. So I'm just checking my time here. We all of the examples I just listed there, wanting safety from our imagination and our thoughts. Think of all the things that we create in our minds that never happen, ever happen. But what the mind does, we constantly evaluate and recognize the ones that did happen, and we take that as proof, as I need to be paranoid and I need to be very watchful of all these thoughts because they're spot on and they're bang on, but the accuracy probably falls at way more, minus than 10%, way below that. I'm just saying 10% to be generous with it. It's absolutely a terrible dictator and a terrible safety measure in the thoughts and imagination we use, and we're using them to feel safe, which kind of we look for with other people, and we're hoping for the thought of love to come to us from other people, and then we're also looking for recognition from others. So that's what we do as a child, and that's what we do now. Why is that, and why am I speaking about that now? It's to point out that in a lovely way, it's not a negative thing, but it does make us have quite a stressful time, that what we're looking for now is what we were looking for as a child. And when we look at that from a child's perspective, from an adult perspective to a child, we're like, that's really childish, but we do it all the time. And I actually put up a poll on Instagram saying, do you think you're childish? Something like that was the question. And then it was a very few amount of people said no, but you would say from the deepest, newest approach to psychology, the human nature itself is childish. And it gets really like, would you look, now this, you have to be very cautious and careful talking about subjects like this, but if you look at a very grim example of sadness, is something like war in a territorial sense, or stuff that's going on right now, that in of itself is childish behavior with very unfortunate and sad and darker circumstances, but it comes from childishness. So I was editing that video, and there was such, when I left it off at war, the very unfortunate happening of war being stemming from childishness. And like obviously you could run a marathon with examples of everyday happenings, everyday very normal behaviors that are just somehow never deemed to be childish. And obviously if you look at politics, the US election had just happened, and I don't like getting too far into specific happenings, but obviously it's just a wee bit apt at the moment. But if you looked at the two parties in any political kind of running, but obviously we just had that very clear example of it, like the bashing of people left, right, other side, just absolutely going at each other, like in this kind of schoolyard sense, coming in with every sort of like jab you could do, getting totally defensive. And I know some of it's a show and some of it's an act, but what is that? Like that, of course, even though it's a name in a game, that is childish behavior. So that runs throughout, unfortunately, most political realms, and again, I don't really like talking about this too much, but I do like talking about the essence of it. That is pure silliness. But be like to think that obviously something that runs like a team that will then and a party that will run a country get there from childish measures, and do you think there's any chance that that stops there after being elected? No, of course, that's the nature of the game. It's childishness, but we never look at something like that as, I think we obviously all sense it, but that's as childish could be, and that's what runs countries. Okay, and if you look at how we handle conflict in the workplace, how we handle conflict in relationships, now this all sounds a wee bit negative, and it's not. It's more just genuine, kind observation, but in a fun and humorful way. That all these things stem from childish nature. How we handle our stresses in life, as it stands where we are right now, a lot of it, the problems come from silliness. And it's a mimicry of the behavior we literally display as a child. But the seeming the seeming weight and seriousness of what we're dealing with, and the consequences get more serious, but we somehow let that overshadow, and it does a very good job, and we're actually very good at it. And if you really look into it, there's an obvious reason why, but the seriousness of the circumstances mask the childishness the childishness of the action in the first place. The whole shebang is silly childishness. So the human nature part of us, why the world seems to be so tipsy-topsy, so bizarre, is because the egost that started as the baby ghost is still childish. The ego's nature is childishness, full stop. Human nature can be so beautiful, but the vast majority of it is childishness. Okay, now all of that again has this negativity to it, and that's not where the idea of the hoodie or the idea of the video really goes to. Because if you look at the design, I'll show it up here one more time before going to maybe have it up on the screen as a graphic. There they are. So the way people have been accurately describing that hoodie is both with, it's an adult, it's a baby ghost holding on to another baby ghost little doll. That does apply, because the baby ghost is just representing how it wants to feel. That's how we always just want to feel, just safe and loved and relaxed and not thinking too much about all the stuff in our head. Even as a baby, that's what the baby in us, or as us, wants to feel. But then it can also be perceived as the adult, the older part of us, that is still holding the baby ghost. So both of them apply. People have been correct. Holding that, because what is it that wants to be safe, loved, protected, and given accolades and a praise? It's our name. It's our ego that's looking to feel safe, protected, loved. So the thing where we started as a child that wants to just feel that feeling, even though it doesn't know what it is yet, when we're older, the name that we haven't even fully felt yet as a child wants to feel the same thing. But the ego by itself is usually quite childish, and in fact, the behavior of the ego and the egost, the baby ghost, is actually the biggest block to the feeling we want to have, because we're very fortunate at Tut to have learned a lot of beautiful processes and techniques and beautiful information that really could change psychology and betterment and just well-being and peace and happiness, where that design still represents the potential of, could we be what we're looking for? Safety, happiness, peace, recognition, ease, just ease of feeling from your thoughts. Do we have to seek that from other people? Do we have to seek that from activities? Or is there genuinely the case where everything you're looking for is really genuinely inherently a part of us that could be accessed when we want it, which sounds like a non-realistic outlook, but that's what's beautiful about that. Is what's actually unrealistic is how our egos and how our thoughts and all of our crazy wants and desires bring us down all the time, because they're looking for what we have inside, which I'd love to go into, but this video has been quite long. But where that is going, like that part of us that really has potentially all we're ever genuinely looking for, on the other side of it, so the childishness, the baby egos, is actually what's stopping the flourishing of what we're looking for. And the flourishing of what we're actually looking for is childlike. So there's childish and then there's childlike. And childlike on the deepest psychological level, and if you want to take it in a spiritual level, is as beautifully profound and as useful as anything could be that you could come across. Now that's where thought explores, that's what we're starting to do privately with people. We're starting to look into doing larger classes now. Could you find that safety, peace, happiness and recognition in the middle of the day by yourself without needing anybody else? And that childlike part of us, before we even knew our ego's name, our baby ghost name, and we didn't identify, was just in this state of playfulness, easiness, nothing to worry about. Now, could that genuinely be a mode of being we could find and live in? And the answer is yes. And that's where the childlike, the beauty of that, that's where our next design is going. But for now, this beautiful baby ghost story shows us that the potential of what we have and what we're looking for, and that we can be that. The safety, peace, recognition, love and happiness we're looking for, we can be that for our little baby ghost. That's an internal experience. We're the love that our baby ghost is looking for, our little baby self.